But I was telling everybody that the minute the Eagles took Ty Robinson, you're like, dude, I'm on the show. I'll talk about this kid. I love this kid.
I told him, I talked to him right afterwards. I said, hey, listen, obviously he went probably go in the third round, and slipped to the fourth. I said, you won't remember any of that, even a year from now. What you'll know is you're one of the best organizations in sports. I said, you're going to the best city, the best fan base, and they're going to love him. You guys are going to love him. Like you're not going to have to worry about, hey, am I going to get an honest day's work out of this guy? He's blue collar and he's tough.
Yeah, and you know better than anybody. You're the author of Temple Tough. You know what we love. And this is exactly this kind of kid who's relentless, right? You look at him and he looks the part, right? He's a football player. And that's what people love in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and he just to speak to his loyalty, the type of guy that he is, he gets done with the combine. Man, he's back here training. We got him and Cam Jurgens are training here in the facility. One day I have Cam Jurgens talk to the team. Next day I have Ty talk to the team. He told me, he said, hey guys, you know what? They underestimate me in this process. I went down to the Senior Bowl the first day I'm going with the third group. By the time we were done with that practice, they put me with the ones. They just, you look at them and you don't know everything that you're getting. You're getting it. He's an explosive athlete. I mean, he put a show on at the combine. So I think the Eagles added a guy that is going to be a starter in this league.
And he's versatile, right? Up. When you talk about playing up front, he's pretty versatile in that sense.
Yeah, we first got here. Before we had gotten here, he was in a kind of a 3-4 2-gap system. I mean, he could get up to 330 and play the nose.
Wow.
He could be 95, 300 and play. Kind of that big, defensive end, not purely an edge player, but the defensive end and can be a 3 technique. So to me, I think when I think about the Eagles, we talk a lot about the coaches. I think Coach Washburn is one of the best defensive line coaches in football. And, talk about a guy that's been an O-line coach, but a D-line coach. Dom Raiola was here, and Coach Washburn's one of his best friends, and he said, hey, how good is that for Ty? Because Ty is so versatile. He'll continue to accelerate his learning. Like he can rush the passer. I mean, he's just going to thrive, I believe, in Philadelphia.
You look and see how the Eagles won, right? How they've built this thing, and they clearly have been ahead of the curve on being a tough, physical, defensive-minded team, right? They draft Jahad Campbell, a first time they pick a linebacker since 1978. And, it reminds me of kind of what you were looking to do. You saw this trend coming early in the NFL where it was going to get away from a passing league, pass, and back to being more basic tenets of football.
Yeah, I go back to the Super Bowl watching that, and then obviously in college, we're using everything as recruiting. We're talking to guys afterwards about it and recruiting and stuff. And that looked to me like a team that had watched the Chiefs for 2 weeks and were tired of watching the Chiefs. And by the time the game started, they're like, hey, let's get this on. And they didn't back down. They rushed, they rushed the quarterback, all the things you guys know. But you look at how he has constructed the team. I mean, best offensive line coach, best offensive line, best elite defense, elite run game. So, when you talk about what wins in the playoffs, what carries, having a run game is always going to carry. Having a great defense is always going to carry. And so, yeah, we tried to do our first draft in Carolina, started that way. I think the thing that Howie's done masterfully is, they found Jalen Hurts, and they found a guy. I played against Jalen twice in college, and his development, his growth in the NFL. He's such an amazing leader, but his growth has been unbelievable. One of my good friends, an old Temple guy, Scott Leffler, joined the team this year as a quarterbacks coach. And when I was talking to him about the job, I was like, bro, I'd be there tomorrow if I were you, because to work with Jalen, to work with Coach Sirianni, I mean, they've done things the right way.
Yeah, I remember that draft when the Eagles took Hurts, and we were all kind of mystified because of Carson. I remember texting you, and you were going, dude, that's a really good pick. Like, you don't understand. Like, that kid's a winner. And, man, all these years later, You were spot on about it.
Yeah, I think if you make it to that level, you obviously have elite skill sets. Is one guy maybe do something a little bit better? I think who can walk in the locker room and keep everyone on the same page? Who can walk in the locker room and command a guy's respect? And Jalen Hurts, I mean, he went from Alabama. This is a guy that got benched and still stayed the next year and fought for his team, and then went to Oklahoma and won that team over. So I can't say enough about him. We have an unbelievable young quarterback here. I mean, we have a kid that's going to be.
I can't wait to talk to you about him. I got to ask you. So we saw the video. I'm showing it to my Massimo. That's ridiculous. And you talk about accuracy. This kid, does he just work constantly?
Well, let me say this about that throw, because you have to understand, in Lincoln, Nebraska, on a day like that, there's probably 30 to 40 mile an hour winds, right? So it'd be like trying to do that on the beach in Avalon or Stone Harbor or something. I mean, the wind is coming, it's blowing it. Just for him to be able to do that, and the thing is, he likes those moments. He wants to go out there and challenge himself. The odds might have been 10%. He works all the time. I mean, he's in here first thing every day. He's constantly doing extra cardio. He's constantly, doing extra stuff to take care of his arm. He knows the offense. I mean, he stands back there when the young quarterbacks are going. He's coaching them. In 1 year, he's gone from a newcomer to college to a veteran, and he'll be here for a couple of years, and he'll move on, and he's gonna, whatever team he goes to, he's gonna accelerate that team because of his work ethic and his command.
What did Dylan? We're talking about Dylan Raiola, who he loves Patrick Mahomes. And you tell me if I'm wrong. The way Kobe loved Jordan, and it's really fascinating to watch, because I remember Kobe being close to Kobe and seeing how he worshiped Jordan and tried to imitate him, the whole thing. And it feels like Dylan's doing the same thing with Mahomes. And that's such a great thing. Of all people, right? You want to imitate. He's the best quarterback on the planet.
Yeah, there's always been some pushback on it, on social media. But I guess social media, I mean, what's the point of getting on there and saying positive things, So it's that's maybe it's part of it. But there's always been some pushback on it. And to his point, this is who he grew up watching.
Right.
I used to get into I'd get my wiffle ball bat. I'm going to get out and I'm going to. Back then I'm going to swing like I'm George Brett.
Yeah.
we're all going to imitate, as we grow up, kind of the guys that we respect. But I think what he's done is he doesn't imitate him; he emulates him. He trains, he goes and trains at the same coach, does the same drills. I think the thing is that he's also worked very hard on himself, making sure he's the best version of himself, being comfortable being Dylan. And he's done a good job of that. So yeah, I mean, if we can get him to play like Mahomes, this will be a happy guy right here. So the kid's really talented and humble at the same time.
Yeah, he seems like what a kid. He seems like a great kid. I mean, it was a blast watching him, and especially down the stretch, because you kind of figured that the season would go that way, right? Where there's a learning curve, you got a freshman starting, and then the last couple games of the season. And then you had what's called on the ropes, man, which was an awesome freaking game. It seemed like he started to really click, and the offense really started to hum at the end of the season.
Yeah, we went out, second to last game, played Wisconsin. We didn't beat Wisconsin around here in 12 years. Scored 44 points. He was on. We went to Iowa. The game came down the end. Unfortunately, we lost. It was they're a great team. It was a great game, and then went to the bowl game and played. Took these guys from all from Nebraska, Florida, Texas, took them up to New York City and let them see what the city's like around Christmas. And he went out there and he played a great game there. So but even now he's so much further ahead of where he was. I mean, he's gonna be a really good player in college football this year.
Hey, what's the this new landscape? I know we're waiting for the judge to rule on roster limits. I mean, this whole challenge, you're in the middle of this thing and it just explodes, right? What's this challenge like? And, as someone that loves Temple, can a Temple exist in this climate?
Well, just to put it in perspective first, it would be like Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni sitting there and Saquon Barkley walking in and saying, hey, you know what? I've decided to enter the free agent portal. Like, well, we have a deal for 3 more years. No, I've decided I'm going to, someone else offered me more money. I mean, the level of tampering, the level of cheating, the level of, I mean, it is so underhanded that it's like, it is just is what it is, right? It's out in the open. So the portal closed last Friday night, 11:59. At like 12:02, I texted our compliance person, like, hey, any late additions? No. Great. Poured myself a drink and, sat there and relaxed for it. So it's just crazy because to the point about Temple, I think back to the teams that we had, that were really, like in 2015, we beat Penn State, we lost the game to Notre Dame. We had like a Son Reddick coming back, PJ Walker coming back. Those guys would be getting offered at Alabama, at Georgia, Penn State. They would all be getting offered to go everywhere. So that will be hard to maintain moving forward. However, I will say this: there's 10,000 kids that are in the portal. And so I think the great coaches at the Group of 5 level will go out and say, hey, what talent's out there? And, maybe you go from being hey, I'm got a 4-year plan to a 2-year plan. We're all trying to figure that out.
Right.
But Casey Keeler's a really good coach. He's won everywhere, and he's won. People forget that when he was the head coach at Delaware, he was the master of like Division I bounce back and transfers, and he won at a high level. So when they hired him, I know they talk a lot about the Philly roots and all that. I saw a guy that he's been able to win in Delaware. He's been able to win in Texas. He's been able to win by getting transfers back. He knows how to coach them quickly, and Temple deserves it as long as the university's putting their support behind it. As long as they're feeding the program and giving them what they need. You're not going to have the NIL budget everyone else has, but there's a way, and I think Coach Keeler will probably figure out that way.
Is how drastically is that going to change too? Because there's going to be a cap, and then there's going to be the NIL stuff, which will be, I guess they'll have a watchdog organization to make sure that the deals are legitimate type of thing. Like, what's the biggest challenge for you? So you got the portal, but also, how are you going to spread out your wealth, right? Like, how do you handle a cap and then NIL deals on the side?
Yeah, so I think the NIL deals on the side, there's probably about 8 to 10 teams that will still have the ability to do that, right? Like at some point, all your donors are like, well, I'll keep giving you $1 million a year, and you got $20 million coming from the university. Like, what are we doing here? But there's some schools who can do it. But I think in general, the cap, if it's enforced, right? If it's enforced properly, will make people have to make decisions. You'll have a guy who says like, hey, I can be a backup, at Nebraska this year, and I can make, X amount of dollars. But these other schools are offering me a chance to be a starter. I had a young man in my office today, and he had the same thing. He was like, Coach, they're offering me a chance to be a starter. And it was a good school, and I was like leading off their roster. It was like a Mountain West school. And I was like, okay, on this date, you're going to be sitting in a hotel in, Laramie, Wyoming, and Laramie's lovely, and I live out by here, but you'll be in Laramie, Wyoming, getting ready to play University of Wyoming, and we'll be getting ready to play like Maryland, like which place do you want to be? And,
sure.
I get the kids, they want to hurry up and get going. It's not even always about the money. They want to play, they want to be a starter. And I'm always just preaching, hey, play the long game. Like the best thing you do is be at a place like this and develop. So it's difficult. And for some guys, it might be right to move, but figuring out how you want to spend your money, you can't overpay a backup, you can't overpay a freshman. It'll change the power structure in college football.
Well, also, I guess recruiting, right? Like, what will that do with no walk-ons? What's that going to do to high school players, right? Like, I got 2 kids. One's they're both football players, and you wonder, hey, if they excel, well, what happens, right? Is it now JUCO world? Is it some of the academies, the bridge? Because everybody likes them older now.
Yeah, and so I think when they first started the portal, what we saw guys go from signing about 20 to 25 guys a year, and now they're signing 12 to 18 freshmen a year. So, and you can still have a walk-on if you choose to have a walk-on. You still can have a kid come in and not pay him a ton of NIL. You can pay him nothing. You can just get a scholarship. But it's going to be, I think it's going to depend on how much money people have. There's places like, you brought up Temple and some of those other ones, they're not going to have $20 million to spend on the athletes. So it might open more doors there. what I would say is, I tell kids all the time, hey, if you find a school that you can go to and they want you to come there and they're going to pay for you to go to school and you like it, you should go. Like, don't miss out on something that's really, really good for you because you're always looking for something else, just find something that fits you. Stay there and excel. And then you know what? After a couple of years, if you only go in the portal because you want to play at a higher level, you can always do that. But 18 of the first 22 picks in the NFL draft were not kids who didn't transfer. They were guys who went somewhere and stayed there. And so there's something about development. So high school recruiting, I think it'll always be there, but it is definitely less, and I think it will continue to be less than it was.